Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of the Further Stars Podcast 5th season. Be sure to like and subscribe. Enjoy this amazing episode because Edward Davis boards the mothership to discuss floaters on Kickstarter. Now come aboard as we're traversing the stars. Hi, Mr. Davis. Thank you for coming to the Further Stars Podcast.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, sir? Thank you for doing the show for me.
I'm great. I appreciate you having me.
So I always sort of a question of inspiration. So it inspired your love for comics and who your earliest influences.
Wow, my love for comics, it definitely started at a young age. I remember going to a swap meet and getting a collected version of old Spider-Man issues, just one of the early trades, and reading that over and over again and just being so enamored with that universe. And I started to dive into Iron Man and Hulk and Avengers and all of those early Stan Lee written comic books. I got very hooked on that, and it kind of never went away from there. I would just buy as many comics as I could. I bought the Star Wars comics. I mean, through the 70s and 80s, I would get to 7-Eleven and go to their comic rack and just buy up what I could afford. And it's like back then, you bring in a $5 bill, you're walking out with a couple comics, couple packs of cards, and a smile on your face. So I just bought and bought and bought as a kid, and whenever we went to the swap meet, I'd get a new collected version, because of course you can't go and buy those comics, the early Stan Lee ones off the rack, but I would just buy those collected ones and just kind of keep current with what was going on. I remember when the death of Robin was happening, that I begged my dad to let me call. I'm like, I have to call, and not to save Robin. I was like, take him out.
You killed Robin?
I did. But I take no credit. My dad's like, wait, you got to pay for this call? I don't give a shit what happens to Robin. So Rob, I had no say in what happened to Robin, because my dad wasn't about to pay. I think it was like 75 cents at the time.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was one of those 900 numbers, and he's like, "No, not a damn chance. You're wasting our money to make a vote on what happens to a superhero."
But you would have voted to kill him?
I think I'd have taken him down, yeah, because I guess I was a dick. So I'm like, I'm just gonna kill Robin. But a lot of people did. I mean, he died and then came back, so no one really dies in comics.
Well, I was gonna say, but Jason Todd was a dick too, though. I mean, let's be honest. He's a hard Robin.
I guess so. If it's Dick Grayson, I'd have let him live. But yeah,
right,
Jason Todd kind of sucked. I didn't love him. Even when I was a kid, I'm like, yeah, he kind of sucks as Robin, so take him out. But yeah, in the end, the fact that it was going to cost 75 cents saved his life, or didn't contribute more to his death.
See, that's what happens when you don't vote. You can't be part of the process.
Yeah, there you go. So I guess I'm the one to blame. But then again, what I was going to vote for won. But yeah, you must vote unless it costs 75 cents and you're a 10-year-old kid and your dad's like, nope, no chance in hell. You're wasting my money on that dumb shit.
Our standards only go so far. At some point, you got to just walk away, and 75 cents was the line in the sand.
That was the line in the sand. Like, actually, I think if it was 10 cents, my dad still would have been like, no, we're not getting a damn charge on our bill for some bullshit like that.
But you have to admit, though, the marketing on that for DC was genius. 75 cents a call, and they get all those people to call just to say yes or no. That's a nice way to make money.
It is, because I think the cover price on those books was at the time maybe $1. So they were making as much as a comic to get people to vote. So it was genius. I mean, they probably made a lot of money on the votes. Although I know I've read that the voting wasn't huge, because a lot of them, it's like you're asking kids to get permission from their parents to spend money on something that 90% of the parents are going to think is of no value.
Right. So, have you considered then making that part of your floaters comic book, calling to kill off a character?
I think I kill enough of them on my own. We don't need to kill anymore.
So, as we're saying, you're the writer of a series called Floaters. So, where did the idea for Floaters come from?
Floaters came from real life. This one was my first book that's very autobiographical in a way. I mean, if you've read the book, it's not fully autobiographical. My family's fine. They're safe. But it started because I was experiencing eye floaters of my own. And I had, at a point when I finally went into the doctor's office, it was about 40% of my visual field was just full of these floaters that look like teeny little gnats. they come in different varieties. I've talked to other people who have them, and mine just look like little gnats. It started with maybe 5 or 6, and I actually thought they were gnats. I woke up and I was kind of swatting at my face, and my wife's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "These friggin' gnats in the room." So like, there are no gnats. What are you talking about? So at that point, I realized, okay, go on the internet, research it, and it says, okay, the floaters are not a problem as long as they don't obstruct more than, I think it said 20% of your visual field. And one day I went out and it was literally 40%, maybe even more, just covered in gnats, fake gnats. And at that point, I went to the hospital emergency room, and the first day I was there, the doctor's poking and prodding me. There's a scene in the book where he's kind of jamming a Q-tip in his eye. That was real life. He really did that. And I had that particular experiment done about 4 different times over the span of 2 days. So he goes, "Oh, everything's fine. You're fine. There's nothing there." And I was like, "Wait." And he said, "Oh, if it gets above 40% of your field, then you let me know." I'm like, "It is already." And he's just not listening to me. So the next day, I went to an actual ophthalmologist and had to pay an exorbitant amount of money because the first place I went was on my network. So I paid this huge amount of money. And the guy goes, "What amateur didn't see these multiple retinal tears you have right now?" So he said, "I can fix them for you, but it's going to cost you thousands." He goes, "You got to go back to your primary, but I'll give you these printouts of all the different things." So I left him and went back to my primary, and this was an emergency room of my primary, and there I sat for 11 hours. And during that 11 hours, that's when Floaters was created. I sat there, and I'm just going through this dread because I have history of visual loss in my family. My brother went completely blind. So when it's eye things, you start to really panic. So I'm sitting in there just hour after hour, and the nurse is finally like, "What can I get you?" It's like, "All right, please give me a bottle of water and a pad of paper and a pen." And just from there, I started to create Floaters. That's where the original first draft was created, was in that hospital waiting room. In the book, he's kind of grabbed and attacked by a homeless woman when he leaves. That was also true. The first night when I left and the doctor had said, "Oh, you're fine. Just let me know if it gets as bad as what you're actually experiencing." That's when I was grabbed by a homeless woman, shaken. She starts telling me, "You're not real. You're fake." And that's why she kind of comes in and starts telling him that he's a lie, because I really had that happen. So a lot of the pieces are autobiographical. I went for a run. That's when I noticed the floaters, and that's when I was also bit by a dog. I threw that into the book. So a lot of the pieces of the book were all reality, just crazy reality that people wouldn't believe was real, but actually happened.
But you're not admitting to the murders.
The murders, but my family's fine. You can check.
All right, I'm just gonna say,
I have no blood on my hands.
So if ever there's a missing family member, we're now going to remember you said it's autobiographical.
Yeah. Just the poking and the bite and the dog biting and the being attacked by the homeless woman. The rest, I don't know. I don't know if there's any other autobiographical. And there was so much stuff that went down in that waiting room. The thing I say is there was a streaking dude. This guy runs out of the room just naked and like, "You can't hold me here." And it's like, damn, that's amazing. But I can't figure out how to add that to the story. I don't know where I could wedge this in with the plot. But yeah, it's like some of the things didn't end up making it because that was just a crazy, between the first night and the second, 17 hours spent in hospitals or hospital waiting rooms. And when it was all said and done, 2 surgeries, 1 laser, and then 1 where they actually had to cut into the eye to remove the cluster that had formed, because that was what was making the floaters happen.
So we have these evil floater things. We have murder, but it's the streaker we wouldn't believe in a comic book. To be like, no, that's just a story too far.
I don't think it wouldn't be believed. I just think it's how could I add him to the plot? Because we don't spend a lot of time in the book in hospitals. It's more an ophthalmologist. He's there. He's talking to the doctor one-on-one. So there'd be no reason to have a streaker bolting out. I didn't set any part of it in the hospital waiting rooms because it's just, I didn't want to. I mean, the initial draft had him in there, and I just thought it's one of those, oh wow, that's crazy moments, but it didn't really add anything to the plot, so I had to chop it out.
Well, there's always variant covers, not safe for work covers.
The streaker variant.
You never know. The way the Kickstarter tends to work, that probably would be what sells the most.
Yeah, that'd be my great one, my not safe for work cover. But just some homeless streaker dude instead of, sexy women. It's like, all right, I did not safe for work completely wrong.
That's awesome. So you're saying the whole the hospital 11 hours, as you said.
Mhm.
How long between getting the idea for floaters and actually thinking to yourself, I'll take the plunge and actually do this comic book for real? How long was that a time frame for?
I think that was about 8 months because it was a very kind of stream of consciousness script. A lot of it didn't make it because it got darker than the book gets, and the book gets pretty dark because it was just a very negative headspace that I was sitting in when everything was being created. So I had actually texted Dan Schmidt did the art for the book, and I texted him when I was in the waiting room. I said, "Look, I just came up with this crazy idea how eye floaters are parasites that destroy your mind and make you homicidal. Are you in?" And he's like, "Yeah, that sounds great." I said, "I have no idea when it's going to happen, but one day you will be called and you will be asked to draw some crazy shit." And yeah, he said, like, "That's fine. I'm not in a rush. I got plenty of jobs in the meantime." So it was about 8 months later that I finally dug out the stack of, it was just copy paper. That's what she gave me. So I pull out the stack of copy paper and think, all right, I gotta mold this into a coherent script. So I'd say maybe 6 months later, perhaps I typed my first proper draft, and then maybe 2 months later came back to it one more time and got the final script that I was happy enough to send to my editor. And from that, yeah, as soon as I gave it to him, he moved really quickly. He was just moving at this lightning speed where when I sent him the script, he was done in about, I don't know, less than a month to get the entire book complete.
Hmm. So after you sent out the Schmidt signal to tell him that he's ready to work, what was his reaction to the story? Like, what did he add to the project?
He was actually great because Dan is a writer himself. So he said a couple points. He said, you know what, this scene might be better if we add a couple pages to flesh out the main story. And it kind of follows along with the homeless woman. We see how she we see how the moment she gets the floaters, how she kind of moves them around. So that was kind of his suggestion, was to flesh out her bits a little bit more, because in the main story she only gets kind of the 2 pages where we see her in her home when she gets the floaters and what happens to her. But with Dan's suggestions, I kind of wrote about 4 more pages that really flesh her story out.
Because I'll say I got the fortune to read the first issue, which was a really fun read. It's a very unique narrative arc of the first issue and how it plays out. So when you're reading it, who do you say is the protagonist of the story? Because it does, who you think is the protagonist kind of isn't by the time you finish. Like, so it's kind of
Yeah,
like who do you say is the protagonist?
I would say the protagonist is probably the man, the one who wakes up, Jason. I think he's kind of the one that we follow in the story, but like you said, it kind of deep fakes you at a point. But I think between him and the homeless woman, the homeless woman really drives the story. And I think the protagonist is just the one, he gets the floaters, and we're seeing kind of their progression and how they are activated, because the floaters are activated by pain. If you have the little gnat ones, every time you feel pain, it brings the floaters more and more to the surface. And when they finally get to the surface, you kind of grow this second weird head out of your eyeball. And that when that head is out of your eyeball, now the floaters are controlling. So I mean, I think it's between him and the homeless woman. It's kind of a dual narrative. And the way I wrote it was, it has really just kind of an ambiguous ending where we see the floaters have been activated in our main character, or one of our main characters, and what's going to happen next. We know it's not good, but where will they get the floaters out of him? We don't know. It
Hmm.
kind of moves through where I wrote it as a one shot because it's one of those things where, do I want to revisit the headspace it took to get this original issue out? And people that I've talked to have said, yeah, you really got to write another issue because it doesn't have to have him. It can just be moving through and see, all right, who gets the floaters next and what happens to them. So I've kind of played around with a few loose ideas of what I would do with issue 2 and, how the pain would be activated. So it's something I'm playing around with, but right now I have so many upcoming books. It's kind of, I could wait a couple years before I really need to revisit it, but it's not completely out of the question. Where at first I said never. I don't want to go back to that headspace. I don't want to live there again. But Dan was saying, yeah, you write plenty of dark shit for Immortal Era. This isn't that different than that. I guess what makes it different is I lived through all this stuff. In Immortal Era, I haven't had to live through any of that. So it's pure fiction, where when the line of fiction and reality cross, it's harder to go back and try to write it again.
Are you looking forward to your next ailment that will inspire your next comic book?
Let's hope not. Yeah. So it's like, all right, I'm going to the emergency room. I'm bringing my notepad with me this time because who knows what great things are. It's the stomach virus that takes over your body or whatever it may be.
Right.
So,
I mean, apparently your injuries are a gold mine.
yeah, why not? Use your injuries, mine them for all they're worth, and, scare other people that get the same thing that you have, because that's what people say. It's like, I have floaters. That's scaring the shit out of me. I'm like, good. That's what it's for. Because someone said, aren't you worried that people are going to be too scared when they start developing floaters? I'm like, no, the whole point is I want to make you afraid of floaters. I want to make you have the same fear that I had to live through. So, live vicariously through me and suffer alongside me.
So when you're thinking about the nature of the floaters themselves, okay,
Mhm.
would you argue that their existence is a random? Is there a deeper, more sinister purpose behind the nature of the floaters? How aware are they of what they're doing? Because I know you said they're kind of described as like amoeba-like a little bit. So
Yeah.
so what would you say? How would you describe the nature of the floaters?
They're parasites and they're definitely aware, because when we see Dan shows a close-up page where they look like these small little insects, not just what we see in our eyes, but if you zoomed in completely tight, you would see they're small little insects. They could be alien, they could be, something like, Lovecraftian, but we don't know. And I think that's the thing that I didn't want to do, was over explain, because so many horror movies, any movie, they just think, all right, well, people really need to know where this came from. And by explaining it, you kind of steal the mystery. So I
Hmm.
could say, okay, a meteor crashed, and through the meteor, these little floaters emerged. It's like, you could do that, but I like it to be just, they're in the world, they're fucking things up, and look out. Hopefully you don't develop them. And I really want to avoid any kind of over explaining of it. So even if I do a sequel issue, it's not going to go into their history. Maybe it'll give a little more depth of people that it's affected, and we can see, oh, wow, these serial killers, they weren't actually evil people. They were affected by the floaters. Little things like that, little nods. But to go in and fully explain it, don't explain the unexplainable, or it just makes everything a mess. I mean, look at when they finally try to explain Pennywise in it's a fucking spider thing, and if you yell at it enough, it dies. It's like, yeah, ruined it. It was
Well,
greater. It was great when it was just a mystery.
it's kind of funny because I was looking at your Return of the Jedi poster in the background. If anyone who's
Mhm.
watching the video, he has a really the original, or what looks like the original Return of the Jedi poster.
Yeah,
And what popped in my head was midi-chlorians.
yeah, I
Uh,
guess so.
just the idea of explaining the thing that you didn't need to explain and then have it. There's no way to make that work. I don't think once it was
Yeah,
tried, they tried to explain it. I was like, you just should have just left it as being the Force. I don't know why you came up with the chlorians.
yeah. The Force was fine. We lived years of our lives knowing it was the Force, not needing to know midichlorians. Are those precursors to floaters? Who knows? Because Darth goes evil too, and the pain makes him go evil. I don't know. So it's sand that makes him go evil, as we learned. He hates it. But yeah, I think yeah, the midichlorians are the perfect example of explanation ruining the mystery behind everything.
Exactly. I agree completely. That being said, though, without saying any spoilers or anything, do you have an explanation in your head that you're just holding on to, or is it something that's just open up to you as well?
I think, I mean, I have a basic explanation, but I think it's stupid and people would hate it. And I think they would enjoy more just watching the floaters do their thing to the next poor victim. I kind of think of like the movie, the Smile series. No one tells us where the smile came from. We don't need to know, oh, it was a voodoo curse or it was a, ancient Babylonian whatever. It's like, no, it's this crazy thing. It makes you do insane stuff. It makes you hallucinate. And we don't need to know why. We don't need to know how. We just know, oh, you get it, you're fucked. And the same is true of the floaters. So I think to go in and explain it with the way, because I wrote it, my original draft did have an explanation. There's a scene in it where one of our characters develops the floaters and she goes onto the internet to try to research what's going on and gets this message from someone who knows what they really are, and he's explaining it. And that, oh my gosh, the original draft that went on for about 4 pages, and it's just 4 pages of exposition dump. And I realized it didn't need to be there. It was too much. But of course, when you're writing a first draft, a huge amount of it just gets thrown out because it's that stream of consciousness. No idea is bad when you're drafting. You can always come back to it later or not. Either way, it doesn't matter, as long as just get all the ideas out. Maybe 40% of them are going to be unusable. They're going to be thrown out, but I have a folder in my flash drive and in my hard drive that I keep all my writing that's just called deleted work. And one day, excuse me, I might come back to it, or I may never come back to it. But I write it down because you use those ideas, and maybe one day there's a nugget of good hiding in all those, kind of tossed out ideas. So that one kind of lives in there now. The explanation. One day I might think, okay, wow, Floaters is really taking off. People love it. And I want to write a sequel. And I look back and I go, okay, that idea is not great at the moment, but with a little finagling, it could be good. So it's there. It's sitting in that file folder as a maybe later we'll deal with it kind of thing.
So that is interesting. Talking about the floaters, um, are they choosing their victims, or is it fully random who's being affected by this?
I think when we get to the end of the book, we see that the victim that they get is someone that was there when they were doing it. So I think they have some say in who they choose, but it's so fragmented. We kind of jump around in the story where I don't want to give too much, and it moves through time and flashes back and jumps forward. So I think as the story progresses, we would see that it's not just randomness. And that's what we would start to see as things move, if there were sequel stories. And there will be. I mean, it's one of those things where I know it will definitely get a sequel. It's just a matter of when.
And one of the characters in the story is Dr. Israel.
Yeah.
Now, is he everything when you're conceiving the character? Is he everything he appears to be? Is there something else that you kind of had an idea for him as his background, or is he let's say a positive character or not within the realm?
He's actually, Dr. Israel is named after the real doctor who, after that terrible night, going there, being told that it's basically you're exaggerating by the first doctor, which I didn't name him specifically, but the character who we see, the doctor in this book, is him. He's modeled after him completely.
Yeah.
Dr. Israel was the one I went to, and he was the one who discovered the retinal tears, told me, yeah, this isn't your imagination. I can't believe that last doctor didn't find these. And I kind of gave him a name drop because he was the one that made me feel like I wasn't losing my mind, because that was the worst thing. Was you go there, you're basically told, hey, it comes with age, you're fine, and if it gets as bad as you're experiencing, then you let me know. And I said, it already is that bad. He goes, oh no, I'm sure it's not that bad. And that doctor was complete dick, and I had to make him a nefarious, horrible human being in the book, but I did not name drop him. And any likenesses are purely by coincidence. And read the small print. It's not you. Get over yourself. So
So
yeah,
you'll for if you did, he'd forever be known as the floater doctor, and people will avoid him
yeah.
forever. Infamy.
Yeah, and people will say, "Oh, what hospital was that? I want to avoid it." I'm like, I'm not name dropping the hospital because I don't need any lawsuits from a book that's not unless the book's making me a millionaire, then sue away. But right now it's funded, but it's not sending me on a new vacation. So it's one of those things where I won't name drop the hospital. I won't name drop the original doctor, which honestly I don't even remember his name. I left. I was in such a foul mood when I left the place, and then you're in a foul mood. You're like, all right, this was the worst night. I'm losing my mind, or the doctor's a dickhead. You know, so hopefully your mind is intact. And that's when, as soon as I walk out the door, I'm ran at like by the homeless woman and screamed at. It's like, yep, it's that kind of night.
So, but as you said, though, the campaign has hit its goal. Congratulations! That's always a good feeling.
Oh yeah.
That everyone gets to exhale when they get their Kickstarters funded for a little while. So you
Mm-hmm.
had at least 10 minutes of thinking, I'm perfectly happy. Of course, after that
Yeah.
is when can I now hit my stretch goals, obviously.
Yeah.
So when you think about your campaign, what rewards are you excited to have your backers get?
I'm really excited about the t-shirts. I think those are great. We haven't had a lot of them ordered yet, but they're gonna look really good. I have a t-shirt printer who does amazing work, and they do it not like the iron-on kind, but actually printing directly on the garment itself. And I really love all the covers that got done. This is one of the few, actually one of the first campaigns where I had multiple cover artists come in and do work for me. And Fish Lee, he did an homage cover to Fright Night that I think came out really great. I love the William Russell cover. He just said, does it need to be one of the characters? I said, no, the floaters move through everybody. So he just drew a wild character that's got the floater face coming out of his eye. So okay, just some random person that's been infected, because we would see another kind of fun thing I could play with is seeing the floaters. We could see floaters during the caveman times. We could see floaters during World War II. Just they've always been around and they've always been affecting people, and that means you don't have to follow a perfect timeline. I can decide, what, floaters issue 2 is going to be set in an entirely different time period in a different country, and write something that's no way related except for the movement of those floaters.
So for stretch goals, are you gonna maybe give business cards to the shitty doctor? You can maybe
Yeah, like doctors to avoid.
right.
I'll just take a picture of the hospital, be like, don't go here. But you would find out pretty quickly, because if you searched it up, it's a 1.5 star on its reviews. So if you go on like the Google reviews, it sits at a lovely 1.5 stars, and I think that's at least that's at least a half star too many, maybe even 1 star too many. So yeah, it's one of those things where, yeah, I'll just draw a map. Don't go here. X marks the spot of where not to go.
Are there stretch goals that have been added since you've hit your goal?
There are. The first one we have got unlocked pretty quickly, and that's the digital bundle. But we are at 2,300 last I checked, somewhere around there. So we've unlocked 2 of the magnets, and I give the little business card size magnets. I've been doing those since Immortal Era #1. So people that have been backing different campaigns have kind of a matching set. And it's funny because I had a friend who told me, yeah, I was going, he does tutoring for autistic kids. He said, yeah, I went to this house and their magnet was lined with their fridge was lined with your magnets. He goes, I don't know who they were. He goes, but yeah, they said, oh yeah, we back them all the time. And here's 9 or 10 magnets that were on their fridge. So I love that some
Nice.
people are putting them up. I know another person I talked to said, yeah, they're on my dishwasher, and eventually I want the whole front face of the dishwasher to be full of your magnets. I'm like, me too, because that means more production on my side. So we've unlocked 2 of the magnets. I think we're 200 away from the third magnet, so I'm going to order it now while there's still some Cyber Monday deals to grab, and that way, whether it gets unlocked or not, we're going to get the 3 magnets, hopefully to the sticker, and then after the stickers, it would be the metal card. So we're moving along. I'm hoping we get to all of them, but at this point, like you said, you get that sigh of relief because if nothing else, it's funded, and we're going to get these books printed and to people. And my goal is to get them by Christmas, but a lot of that is out of my hands. Once I send it to the printer, it really depends on how long their turnaround is. And around the holidays, nothing is extremely fast.
So, as we mentioned before, as you hit your goal, a lot of people watching the show are Kickstarter hopefuls. I have my own campaign that I'm launching in 2 months. So for those people like myself and other people who are the hopefuls for Kickstarter, what is the key to putting together a successful campaign?
I think a lot of the key is to be reliable. I mean, my first campaign, I will fully admit, was basically funded by family and friends. It was me walking around begging, like, please help me out, help me out, help me out. And I mean, there were some, non-family and friends that were in there. But before I did launch the campaign, I went out and did multiple shows. The book was printed, the book was ready to go. I went and built that mailing list. And that's the thing that's important is build a fan base before you launch it on Kickstarter. So by the time I had already launched it on Kickstarter, I already had at least 100 people on my mailing list. And I had been out there doing shows, letting people know that it's out there. And a lot of those people, of course, didn't back issue 1 because they had it already. They had bought it from me at a con, or just a lot of them were just kind of small little book fair kind of shows. So what happened though was when issue 2 came out, they were there, they were backing, they were supporting it because they got issue 1 and issue 2 came out right in the 2 and 3 were both COVID issues. So I got a lot of backers, and then they start to see that, okay, maybe they were reluctant at first, but they see that, okay, you've got 3 issues out. You have 4 announced. So they know that you're not just going to start them on a story that they enjoy and then it disappears. Because indie comics, that is very common. It's people get in over their head. They think, ooh, I'm going to make an indie comic, and don't realize just how much cost is involved in that, how much time and effort. And they make 1 issue, 2 issues, 3 issues, and then they're out. But as you progress and as you release more issues, people know, first off, you're not going to steal their money. You're going to give them the product that they're paying for. And they also know that you are reliable and you're not going to stop the story in the middle. They know that they can get in and eventually read the story in its entirety. So you build that fan base, but it's a slow going process. And a lot of people, I think, when they release their first issue, their goal is way too high. They'll say, okay, I'm releasing issue 1 and my goal is going to be 10,000. And unless you've built up a huge fan base, or you're coming from television or something like that, you're going to have a very hard time getting $10,000. So set a modest goal, set a goal that will recuperate your printing at least, and don't worry about the rest. That will come. That's what happens when you do the shows. It's a back and forth. You get part of your money comes from the shows that you do. Part of your money comes from the Kickstarters. And if you look at it as the Kickstarter has to recoup everything, more often than not, you're just going to end up throwing your own money into the campaign. And that's a detrimental thing. And that's something I haven't had to do because I set modest goals. I knew that floaters was an unknown commodity. It's not Immortal Era. That's a book that will be about to drop issue 12. And the people that read Immortal Era, they know it. They're going to come back for it. So I can set a higher goal. But when it's floaters, it's extremely dark, and it's also something people don't know. So set a goal that you know you can achieve, and realize that it's not going to pay for everything, but with time that'll happen.
So between which days is the campaign active for?
Campaign is active for, let's see, it's closing December 7th at about 7 p.m. So December 7th is, Sunday. So there we go. It's actually Sunday that it's closing, not Friday. So I should pay attention to such things since I'm running a campaign right now.
No worries. But that's awesome. So what we're going to do on the show notes, we're going to have a link to the Kickstarter. So if you're listening to the show and you want to get your floaters, Kickstarter, click the link and, well, copy and paste the link because it's YouTube and get your copy. So thank you so much, Mr. Davis. Hopefully Floaters 2 will come out as well. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you for having me.
All right, fantastic. Have a great night, sir.